They're one of the largest eyes ever recorded in the air. Giant squid, large parrot close enough, but before is known. We because they're still scares me, bro. But it's one of the biggest and what it is, it kind of is, but mistake. Like something that slipped, but you'll see. It's terrifying. It is a jump scare. It is the bobbit worm. Bobbit worms are one of those animals that feel like a mistake. Like something that slipped through a crack in evolution and nobody went back to fix it. Officially, they're Unis Aphroditois, but it's a type of worm found across the tropical seafloor. They spend most of their lives buried in sand or gravel with only their antennae sticking up. Those antennae act like tripwires. A fish brushes against one, and the worm launches upward with this insane, spring-loaded speed that doesn't match a creature with no bones. And when it hits hard. Hard enough to grab, thrash, or seriously injure whatever unlucky fish wandered too close. Fish don't disappear in bobbit territory. They get erased. What makes them so disturbing is how big they can get. The average bobbit worm in the wild is maybe 2 to 3 feet long, and even that is already way too much worm for most people. But rare individuals can stretch 6, 8, even 10 feet if you include the entire segmented body snaked through the seafloor. You almost never see the full animal because most of it lives underground, but divers have pulled up specimens long enough that they have to coil them like a rope, bro. And the jaws, that's the part everyone fixates on. Bobbit worms have a pair of scissor-like mandibles made of hardened chitin that act like a guillotine. They don't slice fish clean in half every time, but they can absolutely inflict catastrophic damage during an ambush strike. These are some of the most dangerous and crazy and scary predators like in the sea. The behavior is just as unnerving as the anatomy. They don't stalk, they don't chase, they don't wonder, they just wait, perfectly still, perfectly silent, sometimes for hours until something brushes their antennae. Then, they explode upward and drag the prey back underground so fast that other fish barely react. And this isn't new behavior. There's a 20-million-year-old fossil site where paleontologists upward and drag the prey back underground so fast that other fish barely react. And this isn't new behavior. There's a 20-million-year-old fossil site where paleontologists found vertical burrows with broken fish bones right at the entrance. It's basically ancient bobbit worm kill zones preserved in rock. These things have been doing the exact same nightmare routine since before humans existed. And because this species is a polycate, people love repeating that if you cut one in half, you get two new ones, which is a myth. But the reality is creepier because it's messier. The head end can regenerate part of the tail, but the detached end can't grow a new head. The actual horror is that they're segmented enough that killing one cleanly is genuinely difficult, especially when most of the body is buried. If you injure it or try to yank it out, it can retreat deep into the sediment and heal. That's what gives bobbit worms the unkillable boss fight reputation among divers and aquarists. You never get the satisfaction of seeing the body, it just disappears again. Even the name has confused people. It's not because the females bite off male reproductive organs. That's not a documented behavior in the species at all. Someone in the aquarium community basically joked about Lorena Bobbit back in the 1990s, the name stuck, and now people assume that it reflects real biology. The actual mating habits of bobbit worms are still mostly unknown. Scientists know that they broadcast spawn, releasing gametes into the water column, but the details are vague because no one wants to sit on the seafloor at 2 a.m. hoping to catch two 10-foot murder worms hooking up. Except me. I would take that job because I'm a freak. The bottom line is this: bobbit worms aren't rare and they're not mythical, they're just hidden. They spend most of their lives buried beneath the sand, invisible except for 5 thin antennae waving like tiny fishing lines. And when something touches those lines, a prehistoric razor worm lunges upward from a hole in the ground and decides whether the thing lives or dies. As far as ocean creatures go, this is one of the most efficient ambush predators on the planet, and humans still surprisingly know little about them because they basically refuse to be studied. The wild bobbit worm is already nightmare material, but the real horror story, the one that keeps reef hobbyists awake, is that you can actually accidentally bring one into your home. Not on purpose, obviously. Nobody looks at a 10-foot sand demon and thinks, yeah, I want that. But bobbit worms don't arrive as 10-foot monsters. They arrive as tiny, nearly invisible hitchhikers buried inside live rock. The porous biological reef stones people buy to seed their saltwater aquariums with beneficial bacteria into microscopic life. And that's the problem. You can't sterilize live rock without killing everything that makes it live rock. So whatever is hiding inside it comes along for the ride. Parasites, nudibranchs, tiny mantis shrimp, and occasionally, the thing that makes every aquarist's blood pressure spike, a juvenile bobbit worm the size of a pencil. It hides deep inside a hole in the rock, stays buried during the day, and feeds on whatever microinvertebrates wanders past at night. By the time you notice anything is wrong, months have passed and the little worm is now 2 feet long and eating expensive fish right out of your display tank. The reason it goes undetected is simple. Bobbits are nocturnal, fast, and vanish instantly. People describe turning on the tank's room light and watching the worm disappear before the bulb even warms up. So the first clue something's off is usually subtle. A shrimp missing, a snail shell cracked, a coral retracted for no obvious reason. Then you lose a fish. Then another. You test the water, check for disease, blame aggression, blame stress, blame everything except a monster living inside the rock. Because nobody assumes there's a hidden apex predator in their living room. Once you know it's there, the nightmare starts. Extracting a bobbit worm from a reef tank is one of the hardest, most frustrating tasks in the entire hobby. You can't yank it out. They anchor their thousands of bristled legs into the rock and hold on like a biological winch. You can't grab it with tongs, it'll retreat the moment you get close. And you can't cut it in half, the head might regenerate a tail, and even if it doesn't, the main body usually retreats deeper into the rock to rot. not. You can't poison it without poisoning your whole tank. And you really can't remove the rock easily if it's covered in live coral, which for many reef keepers is hundreds of dollars of livestock glued onto a giant immovable structure. So people start trying insane things. Red light stakeouts at 3 a.m. to study the worm's route, baiting it with tweezers, feeding it medicated shrimp, injecting shrimp with dog dewormer, filling shrimp with epoxy or superglue, hoping it clogs the mouth, setting mouse traps underwater, fashioning fishing hooks out of surgical steel and luring the worm close enough to snag it. Aquarists in forums, which I'll get into later, describe entire nights spent sitting silently in front of the tank, waiting for a single twitch of movement from a little cave in the rock. Because if you miss your chance, you might not see the worm again for days. And then there are the legendary cases. The guy who tore apart half his reef in his driveway at 2 a.m. and found a 4-foot bobbit coiled inside a rock like a nightmare spring. The aquarium in Newquay, England, that discovered a giant bobbit worm living unnoticed in the display tank, eating fish and coral for who knows how long. The hobbyists who thought they had killed theirs only for it to reappear months later, thinner, meaner, and now living in a different rock. The photos of worms stretched across buckets or writhing on tile floors because the only way to extract them was to literally break the rock open and pry them out like they were part of the structure. And the worst part isn't that this is a rare phenomenon. Reef forums still in 2025 get posts from people discovering bobbit worms after months or years of inexplicable livestock losses. It's so common that some aquarists routinely inspect new tanks with a red flashlight before bed, because once you have one and once it gets big enough to start hunting, there is no ignoring it. The entire tank becomes its territory. So the bobbit worm isn't just an ocean horror, it's a domestic horror too. A creature that can enter your home by accident, remain completely hidden, and silently eat its way through a $1,000 reef system before you even know it exists. And you can't reason with it, trap it easily, or relocate it without risking the entire tank. It's the perfect monster, invisible until it chooses not to be, unstoppable when it's anchored, and entirely capable of outsmarting the person who owns the aquarium. Okay, I want to say that I got a lot of that information from this forum from Michigan Reefers in 2009. It's like some kind of reefing forum, and I found it from this Reddit thread right here on screen that outlines everything that happened to this poor guy who had a bobbit in his tank. It is disturbing and scary and horrifying, and I am so sorry this happened to literally anybody. But yeah, just wanted to, cite my sources there because I was using an actual person's, history. So shout out that guy and the Redditor for, putting it on Reddit so I could easily read it all. Now, after talking about some real things from the ocean, I want to kind of go into some of the ocean myths throughout history, throughout the years. Because myths are awesome, and I want this video to be, realistic and accurate and stuff, but come on, I had to put this in here. So, long before sonar, submersibles, or oceanography